He told himself he was just cold. That's why his chest ached, why his hands trembled, why his throat felt tight. But the truth? He was tired of feeling invisible. The wind carved through the quiet city streets like a blade, slicing through layers of winter gear and resolve alike. Ethan stood alone under a flickering streetlight at the bus stop, his breath fogging the glass behind him. The display said the bus was due in 16 minutes, but he knew better. In this weather, everything slowed down, traffic time, and sometimes even the will to keep going. It was one of those nights that made you question things. The kind that pushed memories you didn't want back into focus. Why he moved to this city? Why he left home? Why? After months of lectures and assignments in silence, nothing felt any easier. The street was empty, the air biting. The only sound was the occasional howl of wind as it cut through the narrow lanes. Ethan had stayed late at the university library cramming for his urban systems exam, ignoring how empty the floor had grown. By the time the security guard coughed politely near his desk, he realized it was nearly 10 p.m. Now here he stood, tired, wired, and alone. His fingers tightened around the straps of his backpack. He glanced at his phone. Battery, 6%. No new messages. Same as yesterday. Same as the day before. He tried to tell himself it was fine. He came here to focus, not to make friends. But tonight, the silence felt especially loud. Footsteps approached, crunching through the light coating of snow. Ethan turned quickly, not sure whether to expect trouble or company. A man came into view, hood down, walking with ease despite the wind. Ethan braced himself. A casual hey was all it took to unravel the peace sometimes. But the man didn't shout or leer. He stopped a few feet away, took in a shivering figure beside the bench, and tilted his head. Rough night for waiting around, he said, his voice calm, unforced. Ethan nodded, pulling his jacket tighter. Bus should have been here 10 minutes ago. Probably stuck somewhere warm. The man chuckled. It wasn't mocking. If anything, it was understanding. I'm Noah, he said after a beat. You look like you're one snowflake away from becoming a statue. Ethan wanted to respond with something clever, but all that came out was, I'm Ethan. Then a cough, dry and sharp. Noah stepped closer, offering the shelter of his coat with no preamble. Come on, I've got space. Ethan hesitated. I don't bite, Noah added, a slight smirk tugging at the edge of his mouth. Unless you're a frost demon, in which case I might have to reconsider. The joke made Ethan's lip twitch. It had been a while since anyone joked with him like that. He stepped closer. Noah opened his coat, wrapping one side gently around Ethan's shoulders. The heat was immediate, almost overwhelming. Not just physical warmth, but something else, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't invisible after all. They stood like that for a moment. Silent. Still. Just breathing. Noah broke it first. You from here? Ethan shook his head. No. Just moved for grad school. Architecture. Urban planning. Noah gave a small nod. Explains the backpack and the 1,000-yard stare. I've seen it before. Ethan smirked despite himself. You hang out at bus stops with stressed students often. Only the freezing ones, Noah replied. I work with young people. Community center. Counseling mostly. Ethan blinked. That wasn't what he expected. Like therapy? Sometimes. Sometimes just listening when nobody else does. That hit harder than expected. Ethan looked down at the snow gathering near their feet. You okay? Noah asked gently. Ethan didn't answer right away. The wind howled again, but inside the coat, it felt far away. I'm just tired, he said finally. That kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. He nodded slowly. Noah didn't press. Instead, he shifted slightly, so they both faced forward toward the road that remained empty. His body still against Ethan's, steady and warm. I came here thinking it'd be easier, Ethan said after a while. City's big, anonymous. I figured I'd find my place faster. Noah let out a breath. I used to think that, too. Ethan turned slightly, eyes narrowing with curiosity. I moved here when I was 19. Thought I'd disappear into the noise. Sometimes, that's exactly what happened. But sometimes the city surprises you. Ethan tilted his head. Is this one of those surprises? Noah shrugged. You tell me. A beat passed. Then another. I don't usually do this, Ethan muttered. What? Talk to strangers in the snow. Let people get close. Noah was quiet for a second. Then he said, then we'll keep it simple. You stay warm. I stay here. No pressure. Ethan's eyes softened. Simple sounds nice. They stood like that until the bus finally appeared down the road, headlights cutting through the snowfall. Neither moved immediately. The coat remained shared. The silence grew comfortable. As the bus drew closer, Ethan spoke again. Do you always wait here this late? Most nights, Noah replied. Part of my route home. I might start staying late more often. Noah smiled. When the bus stopped with a hiss, they moved toward it together. Ethan stepped out of the coat reluctantly. The cold returned instantly, but it felt different now, like something temporary. Inside the bus, they sat side by side. Not touching, not speaking much, but not strangers anymore. Ethan didn't expect it to continue. He thought maybe it was a one-time thing, a stranger being kind on a cold night. The kind of encounter people write about, but rarely experience twice. But the next week, when he stepped out of the library into the frozen evening, Noah was there again. He stood just off to the side of the shelter, earbuds in, sipping something from a steaming paper cup. When he noticed Ethan, he smiled, not overly eager, just recognizing him like someone you'd hope might show up. Ethan gave a quiet nod back, unsure if it was coincidence or intention. Then Noah lifted the second cup in his hand. This one's terrible, he said, but it's hot. Ethan took it with a quiet thanks. And like that, the space between them grew a little smaller. It started happening regularly. Not every night, but often enough that it didn't feel accidental anymore. Some evenings they arrived at the stop within minutes of each other. Other times, one waited a little longer, pretending it wasn't on purpose. The bus still ran late, and the weather remained awful, but Ethan didn't mind anymore. Their conversations started small. School, the city, how buses never follow their own timetables. Ethan mentioned a professor who seemed intent on breaking his spirit. Noah countered with a story about a student who tried to fake a sprained ankle to skip group therapy. They laughed easily, and where silence had once meant loneliness, now it felt like comfort. With each meeting, they shared a little more. Ethan learned that Noah had once wanted to be a teacher, but shifted toward counseling after volunteering at a youth shelter. Noah learned that Ethan came from a town with more cows than people, and that he'd built his first scale model of a building out of cereal boxes at 13. What kind of buildings do you want to design? Noah asked one night. I'm not really about the skyscraper thing, Ethan said. I like designing spaces that do something for the people who use them. Parks in tight places, shelters, clinics, somewhere that feels like it belongs to the people, not above them. Noah looked at him for a long second before replying. That tracks. Why? Because you notice the things most people ignore. Like that cracked sidewalk you tripped on yesterday. You remembered the exact pattern of the break. Ethan chuckled. That was mostly pain memory, but he felt something shift in his chest. He hadn't expected anyone to notice his noticing. Sometimes, they didn't talk at all. They just stood side by side, sipping bad coffee or sharing one set of headphones. One night, Ethan quietly rested his head against Noah's shoulder while they waited. Noah didn't move or make a joke. He just let him stay there. It was during one of those longer waits that Ethan said, almost out of nowhere, I used to paint. Noah looked over, curious but not pushing. Yeah, mostly buildings, places no one thinks are worth looking at. Fire escapes, rooftops, closed down shops. You still paint? Ethan hesitated. Haven't in a while. Why not? Felt like I didn't have anything worth saying. Noah nodded, like he understood exactly what that meant. Sounds like you had too many people talking over you. Ethan didn't reply, but the words settled inside him like something he'd needed to hear. The routine became something Ethan started to rely on. He looked forward to the wait, to the walk, to the ride. Some weeks, it was the only time he felt like he could breathe. Not because Noah solved his problems, but because he didn't try to. He just made room for them. One night, after a long silence, Ethan said, I didn't tell my family I was seeing anyone. They wouldn't understand. Noah glanced at him, but didn't press. They asked if I'd met someone, Ethan added. I said no. I don't know if that was a lie or not. Noah replied softly. Sometimes it takes time to feel safe enough to say yes. Ethan turned toward him. Do you ever wish you'd hidden it longer? No, Noah said. But I wish the world had been quieter when I told it. There was no follow-up, no dramatic monologue, just a quiet agreement between them that honesty had weight, and they were both still learning how to carry it. They began to see each other outside the bus stop. Not in dramatic ways, just lunches between classes, quiet walks through side streets, occasional coffees that turned into early dinners. Noah invited Ethan to the community center one weekend. We're repainting the rec room, he said, and I know someone who understands color balance. I never said I was good at it. You didn't have to. Ethan showed up. The center was loud, but warm. Teens shouted across paint trays and laughed over inside jokes. Noah moved through the space like he belonged, calm but alert, checking in with each person with a patience Ethan rarely saw in adults. Ethan watched him carefully, the way he spoke, the way he made people feel heard, even the way he let them tease him without losing authority. It wasn't performative. It was real. And that's when Ethan realized something else. He wasn't just interested. He was inspired. He started sketching again that night. Small things. Corners of the city he remembered walking past with Noah. A broken stairwell. A bus shelter. A crumpled coffee cup. They showed up in his notebook. Not perfect, but alive. He sent one to Noah with the caption, "Guess the street." Noah replied within minutes. That awful corner near the laundromat that smells like burnt toast and car fumes. Correct, Ethan sent. You win. What do I get? Terrible coffee and quiet company. Perfect. They kept building something, one quiet exchange at a time. No declarations. No dramatic turning points. Just slow, patient trust. Ethan told him about the mentor who once told him he'd never have the edge for real architecture. Noah told him about a student who once called him the only adult that didn't make me feel broken. They shared stories not to impress, but to understand. And over time, they stopped pretending this was accidental. One night, they walked past the stop entirely. The bus came and went, and they just kept walking, hands in their pockets, shoulders brushing. At one point, Ethan looked over and said, "You're not just a guy I talk to on cold nights." I know, Noah said. Ethan didn't need to say more. Neither did Noah. Trust was rebuilding itself between them, not as something dramatic or sudden, but as something earned, something held carefully, like breath in the cold. They didn't call it anything. It didn't define it. But they both knew what had started by chance had become something real, something stable, something that asked nothing but offered everything in return. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel like he had to protect himself from that. Ethan didn't plan on telling his parents. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But timing has a way of choosing itself. The call came on a Sunday afternoon. Routine, predictable, strained. His mother talked about the weather. His father asked about grades. Neither asked if he was happy. Somewhere in between the awkward silence and a mention of an upcoming holiday visit, his mother asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" It was the kind of question she used to ask with teasing hopefulness. This time it was different, casual, obligatory. Ethan hesitated for too long. "Ethan," she prompted. He mumbled something about being busy with school. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. And in that pause, in the tension that followed, something changed. He could feel it over the phone, the weight of what he hadn't said. His father cleared his throat. "We hope you're staying focused. This is a critical year for you." Ethan didn't respond. What was there to say? When the call ended, he sat staring at his phone, the screen still glowing, as if expecting a message that wouldn't come. For the rest of the evening, he felt hollow, like something vital had been scraped out and replaced with quiet. The next night, he didn't show up at the bus stop. He walked home alone, ignoring the cold, ignoring the notifications on his phone, one of which was from Noah. "Hey, all good?" He didn't answer. Not right away. He didn't want to explain the guilt of omission, the strange shame that clung to his throat. How hard it was to speak when you didn't know if your word would land like confessions or accusations. When he finally texted back hours later, "Just needed space tonight." Sorry, Noah didn't push. He just replied, "Whenever you're ready." 3 days passed. Then, on a bitter Thursday evening, Ethan returned to the stop. He found Noah already there, pacing slowly in the snow. "You're back," Noah said. It wasn't accusatory, just real. Solid. Ethan nodded. Sorry about before. You don't owe me an explanation. I want to give you one anyway. Noah waited. I talked to my parents. Or tried to. I didn't tell them about you. I couldn't. Noah didn't flinch. Okay. I didn't want to lie, Ethan said, voice tightening, but I didn't know how to tell them without losing them. Noah looked away for a moment, then back. It's not always about courage. Sometimes it's about survival. They stood in silence, the cold swirling around them. Ethan shoved his hands deep into his pockets. I feel like I'm balancing on this line, he admitted, between who I am and who they still think I am. And every time I move forward, I feel them slipping further away. Noah took a breath. That line you're walking? I walked it too. Ethan turned to him. I came out at 19. My mom cried. My dad didn't speak to me for 6 months. I thought I'd ruined everything. What happened? Ethan asked. They didn't change overnight, but I did. I stopped waiting for permission to be who I was. Did it get better? For me, yes. For them, in some ways. Not in all. Noah's tone held no bitterness, just truth. It wasn't a story of rescue. It was one of survival, of learning that self-worth didn't have to be traded for acceptance. Ethan let out a slow breath. I don't think I'm there yet. You don't have to be, Noah said gently. You just have to keep walking. That night on the bus, they didn't speak much. But when Ethan leaned slightly toward him, Noah leaned back. The world outside still pressed in. But for those few minutes, the noise softened. In the weeks that followed, Ethan started to talk more. Not just to Noah, but to himself. About the life he wanted. The kind of relationships he deserved. He stopped pretending he was unaffected. Noah met him there every time without judgment. They set boundaries, not as rules, but as mutual respect. Ethan needed space when calls from home left him drained. Noah understood. Noah sometimes returned late from work, emotionally spent after hours with teenagers who carried heavy stories. Ethan gave him room. There were days when neither had the energy to talk, and they simply sat in quiet companionship. It wasn't always smooth. Ethan sometimes bristled at things he hadn't yet unpacked. Noah occasionally overcompensated, trying to fix what wasn't his to solve. But when these moments came, they paused. They asked. They listened. One evening, after a particularly difficult phone call from home, his father's silence louder than any shouted words, Ethan showed up at Noah's apartment without warning. He didn't say anything at first, just stood in the doorway, fists clenched. Noah opened the door wider. Come in. Ethan sat on the floor, back against the wall, shoes still on. Noah sat across from him. It's not even what they said, Ethan murmured. It's what they didn't. Like I was talking to someone who didn't see me anymore. You deserve to be seen, Noah said quietly. Ethan looked up. You always say the right thing. No, Noah replied. I say what I needed to hear when I was where you are. Later that week, Ethan invited Noah to a student design showcase. It wasn't a big event, but it mattered. His work was part of a group project, a concept for a shared living space with built-in green zones, natural light, and sliding walls for privacy and flexibility. Noah walked through the presentation slowly, asking thoughtful questions, pointing out things Ethan hadn't noticed in his own design. You're not just building space, Noah said afterward. You're building choices. That's powerful. Ethan smiled. That means a lot coming from you. They walked home through a light snowfall, neither in a rush. You know, Ethan said, I've been thinking. I'm not ready to tell my parents everything yet, but I'm ready to stop hiding. Noah looked at him carefully. That's a big step. Yeah, but it feels like the right one. Noah reached out, briefly clasping Ethan's hand. You get to go at your own pace, he said. But I'm here, wherever you land. Ethan's chest tightened in the best way. A feeling not of pressure, but of safety. A belonging. Things weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. What mattered was this. When the world outside felt loud, disapproving, and uncertain, they had a space between them that made sense. A space not built of walls or expectations, but of listening, of choosing each other without demanding more than the other could give. Ethan still struggled with guilt, with fear, with that lingering ache of not being enough for the people who raised him. But he no longer let that pain dictate what he deserved. And Noah, he didn't try to erase the pain. He just stood beside it, with open hands. And patience. That was more than enough. Finding balance wasn't something they mastered overnight. It came in moments, in trial and tension, in learning when to give and when to ask. Ethan's academic load only got heavier. Studio sessions turned into marathons. Group projects stretched into weekends, and deadlines crept closer without pause. Some days, he would text Noah once and not again until after midnight. Noah didn't complain. He responded when Ethan reached out. Checked in when he didn't. He didn't ask for more, just reminded Ethan he was there. "Don't let it swallow you," he said one night, handing Ethan a takeout box he dropped off at the library. "You're allowed to come up for air." Ethan smiled, exhausted. "This counts as breathing." Noah nodded. "Then let me be the oxygen." It was cheesy. Ethan laughed, but the truth of it stuck with him. That weekend, Ethan cleared the clutter from his window corner and set up his old easel. His hands shook when he opened his paint box, not from fear, but from how long it had been. He hadn't realized how much he missed this version of himself until the brush hit the canvas. He painted the city, the way the sun leaned between buildings, the way alleyways held secrets in their silence. He painted the bus stop, the moment they met, but not exactly as it was, more as it had felt. Cold edges softened by shared breath. When he sent Noah a photo, the reply came within seconds. "Frame that one, please." Painting became a kind of exhale for Ethan, a return to something rooted. He stopped expecting perfection, started painting for himself. At the same time, Noah was pushing his own boundaries. The community center was launching a new mentorship program, workshops where LGBTQ+ youth could learn life skills, explore identity, or just have a safe space to show up. Noah spent late nights writing lesson plans, coordinating with volunteers, fighting for funding. It wore him down, but it lit him up too. "Sometimes I think I'm making a dent," he said one evening. "Other times, I feel like I'm holding up a wall that's about to collapse." "You're not alone in holding it," Ethan told him. "You don't have to be." They built that truth together. That support didn't mean solving everything, just showing up consistently, even when it was hard. There were bumps, of course. One Thursday, Ethan canceled plans at the last minute, buried under diagrams and deliverables. Noah texted back, "All good. Rest when you can." But Ethan heard something under the words. A kind of tired that wasn't about him, but needed space anyway. He dropped off coffee the next morning at Noah's work, scribbling a note. "Let me be the oxygen today." It became a quiet game between them. Small gestures in stressful weeks. A sticky note tucked into a sketchbook. A granola bar left in a messenger bag. A forwarded song link that said, "This made me think of you." Some nights, they barely talked. Noah would stretch out on Ethan's floor while Ethan painted. Sometimes Ethan would sit in the back of a youth session and observe quietly, offering support by just being there. They stopped needing to fill the silence with explanations. The presence was enough. But presence didn't mean perfection. One evening, after a long day of missed texts and misaligned expectations, tension rose between them. "You could have told me you weren't coming," Noah said, voice low but firm. "I didn't mean to vanish," Ethan replied. "I just zoned out. I thought I had time." Noah nodded. "I know it's not about me. I do. But sometimes it still feels like being forgotten." Ethan didn't rush to apologize. He took a breath. "You're not forgotten. You never are. But I have to be better at showing that." They didn't argue past that. Instead, they paused, recentered, and chose not to let frustration bloom into something worse. That night, Ethan asked, "How do you keep giving without burning out?" Noah thought about it for a long time. "I don't always," he admitted, "but I learned to refill instead of just emptying." "And what fills you?" Noah glanced at him. "Right now, you." The truth of it landed gently. As the season shifted, so did their rhythm. They built new habits. Saturday mornings became sacred. Walks through the local farmer's market, sharing opinions on bread samples, arguing over the superior apple variety. It was the only time neither of them brought work or stress. Just each other. Ethan started sketching people again. Not just places. Hands reaching for fruit. A kid resting against a parent's shoulder. Strangers laughing too loudly over coffee. He captured movement, tension, connection. He realized he was drawing feeling, not form. And Noah had something to do with that. "You make me notice more," Ethan said once. Noah tilted his head. How? By caring. About people. About places. About things I stopped looking at. Noah didn't say anything. He just took Ethan's hand in quiet gratitude. Some weeks were harder than others. Finals hit Ethan like a storm. He barely slept, barely ate. Noah dropped in when he could, bringing snacks, stretching out beside Ethan while he worked late into the night. He didn't try to interrupt. He just stayed. I feel like I'm failing at being present, Ethan whispered once. Noah kissed his knuckles. You're here, even when you're overwhelmed. That counts. On other nights, Noah came home drained from hearing too many stories from kids who didn't feel safe at school, at home, in their own skin. Ethan didn't try to offer solutions. He simply held space, a blanket, a back rub, a long silence that said, you don't have to carry this alone. They learned each other's cues. Ethan knew when Noah needed quiet and when he needed to rant. Noah knew when Ethan needed to paint and when he needed to be pulled away from the canvas. They didn't always get it right, but they tried, again and again. The first time they spoke about the future, it wasn't planned. They were watching a documentary about sustainable urban communities. Ethan was half asleep on Noah's chest. You ever think about designing your own neighborhood? Noah asked. Ethan hummed. Sometimes. Somewhere people don't feel pushed out. Where space feels human. I'd move there, Noah said. Start a little support hub right in the middle. Teach, listen, grow things. Ethan opened his eyes. Together, Noah looked down. If that's what you'd want. Ethan nodded. Yeah, that's what I'd want. They didn't speak more about it that night, but something settled between them. The possibility of building more than just routines. Building lives. The mural at the community center was finished that spring. Ethan helped Noah install the final pieces, local art, pieces made by teens, words chosen by the group. We belong here. Together. Ethan stood back, staring at the wall, and smiled. It wasn't perfect. The lines wobbled, colors clashed. But it was alive. Noah came up beside him. Looks good. Ethan shrugged. They did all the work. You gave him space. You made room. Noah turned, leaning close. Like you did for me. And just like that, quietly, without drama, Ethan realized there was something steady now. Not temporary. Not weather-dependent. Real. Not because they never argued. Not because they always understood each other. But because they chose to keep showing up. To keep trying. To keep building the bridge between who they were and who they were becoming. Together. The snow was gone this time. The streetlights still flickered, though, the same soft, buzzing pulse above the same cracked sidewalk. The same old bench stood under it, worn but intact. And standing beside it were two figures, both wrapped in light jackets, both smiling. It had been exactly 1 year. Ethan arrived first. He stood there quietly, watching the street, remembering. The wind wasn't biting like before. It was mild, brushing past him without hostility. The air smelled like thawing earth, and something faintly floral from the nearby park. Noah appeared a few minutes later, walking calmly, his steps deliberate. When he reached Ethan, he didn't speak right away. He just stood next to him, shoulder to shoulder. After a moment, he glanced sideways and smiled. Missed the cold. Ethan laughed. Not even a little. They fell in a step without needing to discuss direction. The bus wasn't due. They hadn't checked the schedule. That wasn't the point. They walked the same block they had that first night, but the silence felt different now. Not born of hesitation, but of knowing. Of a year spent choosing each other again and again, even when it was inconvenient, even when it was hard. Do you remember what you said? Ethan asked after a few minutes. Noah raised a brow. I said a lot of things that night. You said, come on, I don't bite. Unless requested. Noah chuckled. Still true. Ethan elbowed him gently. And I thought, who is this person who makes freezing to death somehow feel less awful? Noah stopped walking. Ethan turned. Actually, Noah said, I've been thinking about that night a lot. Sentimental? No. Noah replied, strategic. Ethan gave him a confused look. Noah reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He handed it to Ethan without a word. Ethan unfolded it. It was a lease agreement. 2 names typed at the top. Their names. Your lease is up, Ethan said slowly. Noah nodded. So is yours. I checked. Ethan looked up, something catching in his throat. "Are you asking?" "I'm not asking you to fix anything," Noah said. "I'm not offering a perfect life or a big dramatic promise. But I'm offering a kitchen with 2 coffee mugs, a hallway with both our shoes, and a bed where you can finally sleep without having to explain your quiet." Ethan stared at him. "I want to build something with you," Noah continued. "A life. Messy, loud, ordinary. Ours." The words weren't flashy. They didn't need to be. Ethan felt them sink into him like spring sunlight on thawed ground. "Yes," he said. It was that simple. The move wasn't cinematic. It was cardboard boxes, half-eaten takeout, and Ethan getting irritated over Noah's chaotic spice organization. But there was laughter and music, and at one point, Noah danced badly in the kitchen just to make Ethan stop worrying about whether the bed frame would fit through the doorway. They painted the walls together, choosing colors not for aesthetic, but for feeling. Warm, inviting, alive. Ethan set up his easel in the corner by the window. Noah arranged his books in a lopsided order that made perfect sense only to him. And in the hallway, they taped up a calendar with joint goals, some big, some silly. They didn't talk about forever. They talked about next month, the fall, what to plan on the balcony. Trust didn't need to be declared. It had already been lived. Ethan's paintings started to change. They grew bolder, more abstract. He captured motion, not buildings, the breath between people, the space between hands just before they touch. He showed them once at a small student gallery. Noah stood quietly in the back, watching people pause in front of one titled 67 bus stop. A figure alone in the cold, another figure stepping toward them. The streetlight above them glowed softly, almost gold. That night, Noah told him, "You paint love the way people actually feel it. Quiet, unexpected, real." Ethan kissed him in the gallery stairwell. Spring came early that year. On weekends, they started planting herbs on the balcony. Basil, mint, a tomato plant that refused to behave. Ethan woke up first most mornings, but he never got out of bed without waiting for Noah to stir. They made breakfast without speaking sometimes, each knowing what the other needed. They learned that stability wasn't static. It was built, reinforced, sometimes rebuilt. Ethan still had moments, flashes of doubt when his parents sent clipped messages, when the weight of being open felt too heavy. But Noah was always there, sometimes just holding his hand, sometimes just being silent long enough for the noise to pass. And Noah, too, had days when the weight of other people's trauma bent his back, when the stories he heard at the center sat on his chest all night. Ethan never tried to pull them off, just lay beside him until the breath came easier again. They didn't fix each other. They stood with each other. On the 1-year anniversary of that first night, they returned to the bus stop again, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to mark where it all began. They arrived just after sunset. The streetlight flickered above. It felt like a nod. Not nostalgia, just acknowledgement. Ethan reached into his bag and pulled out a small canvas. He handed it to Noah. It was a painting. The two of them, huddled under one coat, the snow swirling around them. The streetlight was there, the bench, but the focus was on the space between them, not cold but glowing. "I made this for you," Ethan said. Noah didn't speak. He just looked at it for a long time. Then at Ethan. "I thought I was warm that night," Noah said quietly. "But this is what warmth actually feels like." They didn't kiss then. They just stood there, together, as the sky deepened and the stars emerged overhead. Somewhere down the road, there would be new challenges. Work, family, grief, growth. But right now, on this quiet street, beneath this old streetlight, they had everything they needed. A year of showing up. A shared home. A coat that had once been too small for two and yet somehow fit perfectly. And the knowledge that sometimes the smallest act, a stranger offering warmth on a cold night, can rewrite everything that comes next. They didn't believe in fate, but they believed in choosing each other, again and again. And that, in itself, was its own kind of miracle.